Texas, July of 1944. The sun beat down like punishment as the train creaked to a stop. Inside the dark, sweltering boxcar, German women clutched duffel bags in silence. To the Americans outside, they were prisoners of war enemies. To each other, they were survivors. But to 20-year-old Anna Keller, who hadn't smiled since Dresden burned, this was exile. She expected dogs, screaming, maybe fists. Instead, she saw something she didn't expect: clean uniforms, calm voices, a woman in a white dress waving like a welcome. Anna narrowed her eyes. This had to be a trick. They opened the doors slowly, as if afraid the prisoners would scatter. The heat rushed in, first thick and foreign, hotter than anything Anna had known in Germany. Then came the light, blinding and wide. The American guards waited in silence, rifles slung but not raised. Behind them stood rows of white-painted barracks, flanked by trimmed hedges and laundry lines swaying gently. No barbed wire, no towers, no shouting. It was quiet, wrong, almost. Anna stepped down last, her boots hitting the ground with a thud that felt final. She held a canvas sack to her chest, inside it only a blanket, a torn photo of her mother, and a pair of threadbare gloves. Her fingers clenched around them like a soldier gripping a weapon. This was enemy territory. She reminded herself of that with every step. They were marched not roughly, not gently, just marched, like factory workers at a shift change. The American woman in the white dress approached. She had gray hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that looked like they'd seen too much and decided to stay kind anyway. She smiled and spoke in German. "Welcome to Camp Seagoville." Anna didn't respond. She didn't trust smiles. Not anymore. Inside the barracks, it was clean, too clean. Beds lined in rows, each one with folded sheets and a bar of soap. A chart on the wall listed chores: kitchen, garden, laundry, sewing. No interrogation, no screaming officers, just rules and jobs, like a strange boarding school with guns outside the fence. A woman from Stuttgart whispered, "This isn't a camp, this is a theater." Anna said nothing, but in her stomach, the cold knot of dread began to loosen just a little. She didn't like that. That night, she lay in bed staring at the wooden ceiling. Somewhere outside, a cricket chirped. Somewhere further, maybe a world away, bombs still fell. But here, in Texas, all she heard was the hum of a ceiling fan and the soft breath of the woman sleeping in the bunk above her. She didn't know it yet, but the war inside her had just begun to shift. The morning began with a bell, not harsh, not military, just a single clang that echoed across the yard like it had been doing so for years. Anna blinked awake, momentarily unsure of where she was. The bunk, the warmth, the silence, it didn't feel like captivity. It felt like limbo. She dressed slowly, lacing her boots like she had every day since Tunisia. But this wasn't the desert, and the enemy here didn't shout. They gave out laundry baskets and chore charts. It made her skin itch. They were escorted outside by a quiet guard who tipped his hat when they passed. His name tag read S. Wilkins. He looked too young to carry the weight of war. The sky above was pale and cloudless, the kind of Texas morning that made the air feel stretched thin. Anna squinted at the brightness and followed the others into the open courtyard. Everything felt off. The buildings were spotless. The grass was green. Someone had even painted sunflowers on the mess hall wall. Real sunflowers grew along the fence line. A few women murmured their disbelief. Anna remained silent, jaw tight. She didn't trust pretty things, not after what pretty cities became under Allied bombs. At the orientation, an American woman stood before them holding a clipboard. Her German was careful but clear. "You'll each have duties. This is not a punishment camp. It is a work camp. You will be treated with respect. You will treat each other with respect." One woman scoffed. Another wept. Anna did neither. The guard handed her a slip of paper. "Laundry. Block B." She nodded without a word. As she walked away, she caught sight of a group of women in aprons laughing near a vegetable patch. One of them tossed a small apple into the air and caught it behind her back. For a second, it looked like a postcard, some cheerful fiction. Anna entered the laundry building, expecting the stench of bleach and cold cement. Instead, it smelled like soap and hot water. A black American woman named Mrs. Rose greeted her. Her voice was kind, but her eyes said, "I've lived 100 lives, and none of them were fair." She showed Anna how to load the wringer, how to dry sheets without creases. Not a single word about the war. By midday, Anna's hands were raw and damp, but the work was steady. She hadn't thought about Dresden once. That scared her. She looked up at Mrs. Rose folding pillowcases with careful hands and realized something even more unsettling. She had never met an American before. Not a real one. And certainly not one who treated her like a person. That night, Anna sat on her bunk and stared at the line of sunburn across her wrist from hanging sheets. It was the first mark on her skin that wasn't from war, but from work. She didn't know which one hurt more. There were no fences, but the boundaries were clear. You didn't ask questions. You didn't step beyond the gates without permission. And you never forgot whose land you were standing on. Camp Seagoville wasn't brutal, but it was a cage, politely built and quietly enforced. The kindness came with structure. Each girl had her duty. Each day had its rhythm. The Germans worked. The Americans watched. And in between, something began to stretch between them. Not trust. Not yet. But something thinner. Tension. Maybe. Or the beginning of something less rigid. Anna's days fell into a steady beat. Wake up. Wash. Report to laundry. Haul baskets of damp uniforms across the gravel path. Scrub. Wring. Hang, fold, return, sleep. It was mindless work, but that was a relief. After years of constant alerts, sudden gunfire, and watching smoke rise from cities she once memorized, the repetition was a strange form of mercy. It dulled the noise in her head. Still, there were rules. You didn't get too comfortable. You didn't speak unless spoken to. You didn't look at the guards too long. And if one of the American matrons handed you something with a smile, you nodded. But you didn't smile back. That was the rule the women had made for themselves. It wasn't written anywhere, but it held like steel. But rules only hold until someone forgets. It was a Thursday when it happened. Anna had just finished hanging the last bedsheet on the line when a gust of wind snapped it loose. The cloth flapped like a flag, and before she could catch it, it landed in the dirt. She bent to pick it up, cursing under her breath in German. A voice behind her said, "Let me help." She turned, startled. It was one of the guards, not a soldier, but one of the civilian supervisors. A man in his 40s, clean-shaven, sun-worn skin, holding the other corner of the sheet. She froze. He waited. Then, wordlessly, she took the other end. Together, they clipped it back on the line. "Danke," she muttered. He just nodded and walked off. The other women had seen it. No one said anything. But that night, in the barracks, a girl from Leipzig whispered, "You should be careful. That's how they try to soften you." Anna didn't reply. But she remembered the way he held the cloth, how gently his fingers moved across the line, not like a guard, more like a neighbor. The next morning, she caught herself humming while folding towels. When she noticed, she stopped, cheeks burning. This wasn't home. This was still the enemy. But part of her, against her will, had started wondering if they felt the same. The scent hit her before she even saw it warm, spiced, impossible. Anna was carrying a stack of damp towels through the corridor when it floated past like a memory. Cinnamon, not the fake kind used in soap or cough drops, but real cinnamon, baked into something soft, something alive. Her arms paused mid-step, and her throat tightened. The smell had no business being in a prison camp. She followed it without meaning to, past the laundry shed, around the courtyard, until she reached the kitchen's open back door. Inside, women in aprons moved between ovens, stirring pots and flipping dough. The room was full of steam and motion, and laughter, actual laughter. American women. A few prisoners too, all working side by side. One of them, blonde hair in a tight braid, maybe 25, glanced up and met Anna's stare. She smiled. Anna turned to leave. "Hey," the woman called out. "You want one?" She was holding a tray of golden brown rolls, steam curling off the top. Anna froze. Her mouth betrayed her body and watered instantly, but she didn't move. "They're extra," the woman said, switching to slow, careful German. "You don't have to eat it. You can just smell it, if you want." Anna took a step forward, unsure whether she was being mocked. The room had gone quiet. The other kitchen staff didn't interfere. They just watched. The American held out the roll with both hands, like a peace offering. It was dusted with sugar. A crack in the top revealed a soft, glistening center. Anna reached for it slowly, fingers trembling slightly as she accepted the bread. She didn't say thank you. She didn't look the woman in the eye. She just walked away, clutching it like it might vanish. Behind the barracks, she sat on the steps and broke the roll in half. The smell released again, sugar, butter, spice. She brought it to her lips but didn't bite. Not yet. Her mind pulled back to Dresden, her mother's hands kneading dough, flour in her hair, humming through the hunger of ration years. The war had stolen so much, but for a moment, in this odd, gentle place, something stolen had been returned. She took the first bite. It melted, soft and sweet and unreal. Tears came before she could stop them. She wiped her cheek angrily, furious at herself for feeling anything in a place built by her enemy. But the warmth stayed. Later, she asked another girl who the American was. Margie, they said, cook's daughter. She likes to feed people. Anna didn't trust her. Not yet. But the next morning, she walked past the kitchen again. The door was open. And this time, she didn't turn away. There was a patch of earth beyond the main barracks where nothing official happened. No signs, no patrols, just a fence, a garden, and one woman who didn't seem to belong to either side. She was old, not ancient, but old enough that time had etched softness into her skin. She wore a straw hat most days, and a faded dress that trailed in the dirt. Her hands were always in the soil, pulling weeds, tying vines, watering rows of vegetables that stretched right up to the edge of the prisoner boundary. No one spoke to her. No one stopped her. She just appeared every morning, like the sun, and worked without pause. The German women called her the garden ghost. Some joked she was a widow planting food for the dead. Others said she was the wife of a guard, or maybe the camp founder's sister, long forgotten. No one knew. Anna never asked. But every afternoon, as she hung laundry near the fence, she watched. The woman moved slowly but deliberately. Her fingers handled each plant like a friend. Tomatoes, green beans, squash, things Anna hadn't seen since before the war. Real food, grown with care. It made her chest ache in ways she didn't have language for anymore. One day, the woman looked up and met Anna's gaze. Not for long, just a flicker. Then she returned to her pruning. The next afternoon, a single tomato appeared on the fence post, bright red, perfect. Anna spotted it just before returning to her bunk. She hesitated. Was it meant for her? A trick? A joke? But there was no one around, just the tomato, waiting. Her stomach growled. She picked it up, cradling it in her palm. Still warm from the Sunday, she didn't eat it right away. She brought it to her bed, stared at it until the moon came up. Then, slowly, she took a bite. It was real, juicy, sweet, sharp. She closed her eyes. No bread, no sugar, no cinnamon, just a tomato. And somehow, it hurt more than the roll, because this wasn't a gift from a cook or a worker. It came with no smile, no name, no words, just presence and silence. The next day, another tomato. This time, she didn't hesitate. She picked it up, nodded toward the garden, and walked away. The woman never waved, never smiled, but she kept planting. Days passed, then weeks. Tomatoes turned to cucumbers, squash blossoms peeked through the leaves, and Anna kept watching. She wasn't ready to trust. Not yet. But something was softening beneath the skin she'd built in bomb shelters and train cars. Not surrender, not friendship. Just something alive, something growing. The paper was thin, the kind that tore if you pressed too hard. Anna smoothed it across her lap, biting her bottom lip. She had started and abandoned this letter 4 times already. Each version began the same, "Dear Mama." But what followed kept changing. Too formal, too cold, too much. Nothing ever sounded right. How could she explain where she was, what she was feeling, what she wasn't supposed to feel? The pencil hovered. Outside the window, the women were peeling carrots in the sun, sleeves rolled to their elbows. Somewhere, someone was playing a slow tune on a harmonica, and beneath it all, that awful, beautiful smell, again fresh bread. She began, "Dear Mama, I am safe." That part was true, safer than she had expected. Safer than she deserved, maybe. The camp is strange. Not like what we imagined. There is food, beds, kindness, even. But it is confusing. She stared at the word, confusing. It didn't feel strong enough. The Americans smile. Some of them speak German. They give us work, but not pain. I don't know what to make of it. I don't trust it, not entirely. But sometimes I find myself waiting for the smell of cinnamon in the morning, or for another tomato on the fence. She paused, the pencil trembling. There is a woman named Margie in the kitchen. She gave me a roll once. I didn't thank her. I couldn't. But I think she knew what it meant. She looked at those words, heart thudding. Was this betrayal? To speak of warmth in a place like this? Her country was still at war. Her mother might be under rubble for all she knew. And here she was, writing about tomatoes and bread. She flipped the paper over and started a second letter, this time the version that might get past the censors. Dear Mama, I am alive. I am working in laundry. We are treated as prisoners, but not poorly. I hope you are safe. I hope the garden survived the spring. I think of your apple cake. I dream of your hands. That was all. She folded both versions carefully. One she tucked into her coat pocket, a letter for no one. The other she placed in the outbox near the mess hall. That night, she dreamt of home. But it wasn't Dresden. It was this strange, warm camp. The laundry steam, the garden fence, Margie's quiet voice, and the smell of something baking. She woke before dawn, tears drying on her cheeks. She didn't know if the letter would ever reach her mother. She didn't even know if her mother was still alive. But for the first time since arriving, she had something to write about. Something besides fear. Thanksgiving came with no warning. One morning in late November, the guards hung paper decorations in the mess hall, turkeys, pumpkins, garlands of red and gold leaves that looked like they belonged in a storybook, not a prison camp. The women didn't understand. In Germany, autumn meant ration books and frostbitten mornings. But here, it meant pie crusts, laughter from the kitchen, and a curious kind of celebration they weren't invited to, at least not yet. Anna watched from the laundry doorway as boxes of vegetables were carried in, their bright colors almost painful against the gray of routine. She could smell roasted meat, herbs, something buttery and thick. The scent stirred a strange hunger that went beyond her stomach. Later that afternoon, an announcement came. The American staff had voted unanimously to include the prisoners in the Thanksgiving meal, not out of obligation, out of something else. The women murmured. Some were suspicious, others excited. A few refused altogether, claiming it was propaganda. Anna said nothing, but when the hour came, she followed. The mess hall had been transformed. Tablecloths, candles, plates stacked with roasted turkey, mashed potatoes, corn, and something brown and sweet she didn't recognize. The Americans served them by hand, no trays, no barriers, just food, passed from one person to another as if none of them had been raised to hate each other. Anna sat beside Margie, who was flushed from the kitchen heat and smiling with a quiet pride. They didn't speak, just ate. Every bite was surreal. The turkey melted, the potatoes were soft as clouds, and the brown thing pumpkin pie tasted like everything Anna had forgotten the world could be. Around her, the room shifted. Guards leaned back in their chairs. Women laughed. One of the matrons played a hymn on an old piano in the corner. Someone passed a harmonica to a prisoner who knew how to play. And before long, they were all humming along to a song none of them had ever learned, but somehow already knew. Anna looked around the table. The girl from Stuttgart was wiping tears from her cheeks. The garden ghost had come inside for the first time, seated quietly with dirt still under her nails. Even the captain, always so stiff and distant, was smiling faintly as he sipped from a chipped mug. Anna's plate was clean. She hadn't spoken all night. But in the silence, she had listened to laughter, to forks clinking, to the way war sounded when it stopped for a single evening. Afterward, as the women returned to their barracks under a sky full of stars, Anna lingered on the path. She looked back at the mess hall, glowing warm behind her. It wasn't home. It never could be. But for the first time in years, she had eaten without fear. And that, she thought, was its own kind of freedom. Anna was assigned to kitchen duty the following week. It wasn't a request. The matron handed her a folded slip of paper and said, "Report to Margie at dawn." She nodded, careful not to show how the words unsettled her. She hadn't spoken to Margie since the Thanksgiving meal, and even then, it had only been nods and glances. Sharing a table was one thing, sharing a stove was another. The kitchen smelled like childhood, yeast and sugar, flour and fat. It was warm in a way that made her sweat, but she didn't mind. Steam fogged the windows. Pots bubbled gently. Margie stood by the table rolling dough with her sleeves rolled up and a smudge of flour on her cheek. When Anna entered, she looked up and offered a simple smile. No ceremony, no awkwardness. Just, "You ever peeled 20 pounds of potatoes?" Anna shook her head. "Today's your lucky day." For hours, they worked side by side. No orders barked, no walls between them, just shared motion. Anna peeled while Margie chopped onions. When the tears came, they laughed. When dough stuck to their fingers, they swatted at each other with ragged towels like girls in a boarding house. It didn't feel like a job. It felt like a pause in the war. At one point, Margie stopped and leaned on the counter. Her voice softened. "My brother died in France, 1943. He was only 19. Anna froze, a potato halfway peeled in her hand. She looked over, unsure if this was a trap. Margie wasn't crying. Her face was calm, but tired. "I hated you people for a long time," she continued. "Still do, some days." Anna said nothing. Margie shrugged. "But hate's too heavy to carry in a kitchen. Flour doesn't care who started the war." Anna wanted to say something, anything, but the words refused to come. So instead, she nodded and handed Margie a peeled potato. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. Later, they baked cinnamon rolls again. This time, Margie showed Anna how to fold the dough, how to tuck the edges so the filling wouldn't spill. Their hands touched, just briefly, dusted with sugar and flour. No one spoke of war. No one mentioned the camps. It was just dough, heat, and silence. As the sun lowered, painting the sky in soft gold, Anna walked back to the barracks with aching arms and the smell of cinnamon clinging to her hair. She didn't tell the others what Margie had said. It didn't need to be shared. It wasn't a speech or a confession. It was just truth, exchanged without demand. That night, Anna sat in bed and listened to the wind against the shutters. She thought of Dresden, of her brother, of the mother who might never read her letters. And then she thought of Margie, peeling onions with steady hands. It was easier to breathe in the quiet now. The package arrived with no warning. It was a Red Cross delivery, plain brown wrapping, string tied tight, her name printed in neat black ink. Anna stared at it as if it might vanish. Others had received packages before, mostly stale biscuits, powdered milk, worn-out socks, but this one was hers. She took it in her arms slowly, cradling it like something fragile. Her fingers shook as she unwrapped the paper. Inside was a bar of chocolate, already soft from the Texas heat. A wool scarf, gray, hand-knit, the pattern unmistakably her mother's. And at the bottom, folded like a prayer, a note. The paper was creased and smudged, but the handwriting was hers. "Anna, we are alive, barely. Come home if you can." The words blurred. She read them again, and again, as if repetition could build a bridge across oceans. Her mother was alive. Her mother had touched this paper. Her mother remembered. Anna didn't cry, not right away. Instead, she took the scarf in both hands and pressed it to her face. The faintest trace of home clung to it, dust and lavender, the smell of their old wooden stove. The scarf was rough, uneven in places, a small hole near the corner where her mother's hands must have trembled. That flaw made it sacred. She didn't notice Margie at first. The cook had come to drop off a pan and paused in the doorway. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, slowly, she crossed the room and sat beside Anna on the cot. "They sent you something?" she asked gently. Anna nodded, still clutching the scarf. "Your folks okay?" Again she nodded, then shook her head. "Some are. I don't know." Margie didn't press. She didn't offer platitudes. She just sat, letting the silence fill the space like warm air. Outside, the cicadas were singing. Somewhere beyond the barracks, someone was laughing. But in that moment, there was only the scarf, the note, and Margie's quiet presence. Finally, Anna whispered, "I thought they were gone." Margie nodded. "I thought my brother was just missing. But the letter came from the army. He's buried in Normandy." Their eyes met two different uniforms, 2 different languages, but the same hollow ache. They didn't need to explain it. Anna reached into the box and broke the chocolate bar in half. She handed one piece to Margie. "You sure?" Margie asked. Anna gave a small nod. "It's better shared." They ate in silence. Later that night, after lights out, Anna lay awake under her thin blanket, scarf pressed to her chest. She didn't feel peace. Not yet. But she felt something else, a thread tying her to the world beyond the wire, to a kitchen in Dresden, to a grave in Normandy, to a shared piece of chocolate in Texas. And it was enough to sleep. The photographer came on a Wednesday. The camp was swept and polished like a stage set. Fresh uniforms were handed out, bunks made tighter than usual, and the kitchen was told to bake extra bread. The women noticed. They always noticed when the Americans wanted to prove something. Anna stood in line for roll call, the sun already high and blinding, as the photographer adjusted his lens and muttered instructions in English to the captain. It was clear this wasn't for them. It was for the newspapers, for the world outside the barbed stories of war, to show that even enemy women could be treated with dignity. The man with the camera circled the camp slowly, snapping images of barracks, laundry lines, women smiling when asked. Some of the prisoners complied, offering polite grins and folded hands. Others refused outright, arms crossed, faces blank. Anna wasn't sure what to do. She didn't want to be used, paraded. But she also wasn't the same girl who stepped off that train last July. She was working in the kitchen that day, elbow deep in bread dough when he entered. Margie waved him in with the same ease she used to greet the milk delivery. "You want a picture?" she told him. "Take one of the real camp." He chuckled and raised his camera. Anna turned her face away, but not fast enough. The shutter clicked. She winced, then looked back. Margie was standing beside her, arms dusted with flour, apron stained, face open and soft. The photographer tilted his head and took another photo, this time of both of them, side by side at the wooden table, dough in their hands, steam curling in the air. He didn't ask them to smile, and strangely, they didn't need to. Anna's lips curved slightly, just enough to soften her jaw. She didn't know why. Maybe because Margie was beside her. Maybe because the smell of warm bread reminded her of home. Or maybe because for the first time, the war didn't feel like the only story being told. After he left, Margie wiped her hands and said, "We'll be in some newspaper, I bet. Your mama's going to see you baking American bread and faint." Anna laughed. A small, honest laugh. "I hope she does," she said. That night, word spread that the photos would be sent to the local paper in Dallas. Some women grumbled. Others were quietly proud. Anna didn't say much. But when she lay down to sleep, she thought of the shutter sound, the way Margie had stood beside her without hesitation, and how neither of them had flinched. In the quiet dark of the barracks, she whispered to the ceiling, "Let her see it." Whether she meant her mother or the world, even she wasn't sure. But for once, she didn't feel invisible. By the time spring arrived, the air felt heavier with something that had no name. It wasn't fear, not exactly, but it lived near fear, in the same part of the chest. The guards walked slower now, heads bent toward radios. The matrons whispered over coffee. Letters came less often. Some stopped altogether. And in the silence left behind, rumors took root. The war was turning. Germany was falling. Cities were burning. Surrender was coming. Anna heard it in fragments. A sentence dropped during dishwashing. A coded look between prisoners. Someone had seen a newspaper headline through the fence. Berlin in danger. It didn't feel real. It felt like another distant world, separate from the garden, the bakery, the routine. But it crept in anyway, through the cracks in conversation, through the hollowness in letters that never arrived. She found herself staring at the American flag more often. It waved above the camp like a promise or a warning. She didn't know which. Sometimes, when no one was watching, she imagined what it would be like to return home. What home would even mean? Would her house still be standing? Would her mother know her? Would she know herself? Margie seemed to sense the shift. She didn't ask questions, didn't make speeches, but she stayed closer. She brought Anna coffee in the mornings, stronger than usual, and whistled old American songs while they cooked. One morning, she handed Anna a postcard blank on the back. It showed a field of bluebonnets under a wide Texas sky. "Just in case you forget what spring looks like," she said. Anna tucked it into her coat pocket. She didn't know how to thank her, so she didn't try. She just kept showing up on time, apron tied, hands clean. It was the only language she trusted. The other women began to change too. Some grew quiet, walking slower, staring longer into space. Others became restless, starting arguments over nothing. One girl from Bremen tore her pillow open and sobbed into the feathers like it was the only softness left in the world. Anna watched and said nothing, but at night she traced her mother's handwriting with her thumb until she fell asleep. One evening, a matron announced a special radio broadcast. The war in Europe might end soon. Official word was coming. The room went still. Some women looked relieved, others terrified. Anna just sat, hands in her lap, unsure what to feel. If peace came, what would it ask of her? Who would she be without the war to explain her silences, her edges, her need to keep things folded tight inside? She looked at Margie across the mess hall, at the way she moved through the kitchen like she belonged there, not because of a uniform, but because of how she treated the room. Anna wondered if she would ever walk through her own country with that kind of ease again. Or if, like the war, something inside her had already ended. The announcement came on a soft April morning, carried not by trumpet or telegram, but by the quiet weight in the captain's voice. He stood at the center of the courtyard, flanked by two guards who looked more like statues than men. The German women gathered slowly, laundry half-hung, garden tools abandoned mid-task, hands drying on aprons. Anna stood near the back, arms crossed, the wind tugging at the ends of her scarf. "The war in Europe is over," the captain said. "Germany has surrendered." No one moved. Not at first. It didn't sound real, not when spoken in English, not under a blue Texas sky with birds chirping like nothing had happened. The words dropped like stones into a silent lake. Some women gasped. A few collapsed to their knees. Others simply stared. Anna didn't move. She felt the earth shift under her boots, but her body remained still. It was over. She had imagined this moment for years, but never like this. Not surrounded by magnolia trees and polite guards, not holding a potato peeler in one hand and a memory of her mother's face in the other. She thought she'd feel joy, or fury, or something louder, but all she felt was hollow, like the war had taken so much that even its ending couldn't return what was lost. Later that day, the matrons began handing out departure forms. Some prisoners would go home within weeks, others might wait longer. There were logistics, lists, ships. Anna stared at the paper in her hands, her name, her birthplace, her next destination marked as "to be determined." She traced the ink with her finger. Home was now a concept more than a place. What was left in Dresden? A ruined city, a grave, or a door still standing, waiting for her knock? Margie found her that evening sitting on the back steps of the kitchen, the scarf wrapped tight around her shoulders, even though the air was warm. "You okay?" she asked. Anna nodded. "I think so. You'll be leaving soon." "Yes." They sat in silence, the kind that comes when there's nothing left to say without saying too much. After a while, Margie reached into her apron and pulled out a folded napkin. Inside was a slice of pie pecan, still warm. "I saved you the last piece," she said. Anna took it with both hands, careful not to drop it. Her throat tightened. She blinked fast, but the tears came anyway. She didn't hide them. "Thank you," she whispered. Margie touched her shoulder lightly, just once. Then she stood and walked back inside. Anna sat there until the stars came out, eating the pie in small, reverent bites. Each one tasted like goodbye. Not the kind shouted across train platforms, but the kind that lives in silence, in memory, in the quiet truth that some strangers become anchors. And some enemies, once seen fully, are no longer enemies at all. The morning they were set to leave, the sky hung low with clouds, as if even Texas couldn't decide how to say farewell. The women stood in rows, bags at their feet, the same way they had stood when they arrived, silent, uncertain, watching. But they were not the same girls who had stepped off the train nearly a year ago. Their hair had grown longer, their faces had softened in places, hardened in others, and somewhere deep inside them, something had changed. Anna clutched her coat close, scarf tucked into the collar, her mother's letter folded neatly in her pocket. Her stomach churned, not with fear, but with something far more confusing grief for a place she had once resented. The camp was quiet, too quiet. No guards barking orders, no distant radio voices, just the shuffle of feet and the occasional sniffle, quickly disguised. The Americans had prepared a meal, one last gesture. It was laid out on long wooden tables beneath the open sky, roasted chicken, cornbread, apple pie. Not rations, not army food, real food, farewell food, a meal that said, "We saw you, you mattered." Anna took her plate with both hands and sat at the edge of the bench. The bite of cornbread crumbled between her fingers. The flavor was soft, sweet, and strange, too much like comfort, too much like something she would miss. Margie appeared beside her with 2 mugs of coffee, one chipped, one whole. She sat down without a word, placed the whole mug in front of Anna, and took a long sip from the chipped one. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The coffee steamed between them. Then Margie asked, "You know where you're going?" Anna shook her head. "Home, they say. Whatever's left of it." Margie nodded. "You'll find it, or you'll build it again." Anna wanted to believe her, wanted to hold onto this last bit of kindness like a shield. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the bluebonnet postcard, now worn at the edges, and slid it across the table. "For you," she said, "so you don't forget us." Margie blinked, looked down at the card, and then smiled quiet, full. "I won't," she said. When the trucks pulled up, the women rose, bags slung over shoulders, eyes glancing back one last time. Anna paused by the gate. She turned and looked at the kitchen, the laundry line, the garden. At Margie. She raised her hand. Margie raised hers back. No words. None needed. As the engine rumbled to life and the camp disappeared behind a wall of dust, Anna clutched the warm mug in her lap, holding it steady even as the road jostled beneath her. She didn't cry, not yet, but her chest was full of things that could no longer be spoken in any language but memory. The train that brought her home looked nothing like the one that took her away. It was slower, quieter, and filled with the kind of silence that only comes after something ends. Anna sat by the window, her fingers tracing the glass, watching the world blur past in shades of ash and smoke. Germany was broken. Villages had been flattened. Forests, once thick and proud, now stood like graveyards. Every station passed was a reminder of how far the war had reached and how much it had taken. When the train finally pulled into the outskirts of Dresden, she stepped off with the scarf still wrapped around her neck and the coffee mug buried in her pack. The postcard she had given Margie had been replaced with a folded cinnamon roll recipe Margie had written by hand, flour-stained and smudged. Anna didn't know if she'd ever bake it, but it stayed with her anyway. The house was gone. Nothing remained but a cracked foundation and the charred skeleton of a staircase. Anna stood at the edge of it for a long time, wind whipping through the hollow remains. She didn't cry. The tears had dried somewhere on the Texas road, or maybe in the back of the army truck. What she felt now was not grief, it was absence, a quiet so deep it pressed against her ribs. But even in the ruins, there were signs of life. Children playing with rusted spoons, an old man dragging bricks into a neat pile, a woman hanging laundry between 2 trees that had somehow survived. Anna walked past them, her boots crunching over broken tile, carrying nothing but a name and a memory of warmth. Years later, she would tell her granddaughter the story, not of bombs or soldiers or the politics that carved borders in blood, but of Camp Seagoville, of sunflowers on a mess hall wall, of tomatoes left gently on fence posts, of a woman named Margie who never asked for anything but gave everything in small, quiet ways. "We came as enemies," Anna would say, brushing flour from her hands as the oven warmed the kitchen. "We were told to hate, taught to fear, but I met someone who didn't follow the rules of war. She used cinnamon instead of anger, and for a little while, in a place meant to break us, something good grew." Her granddaughter would always ask, "Did you ever see her again?" And Anna would smile. "No, but I think of her every time I bake." She would pause, press her hand against the old scarf still hanging by the door, and add, "Some people enter your life for only a season, but they never really leave." Then she'd take the pie from the oven, the same way Margie had done all those years ago, and serve it with quiet hands and a soft heart. And the war, just for a moment, would be forgotten. If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes enemies can become friends. For more forgotten truths from the shadows of war, subscribe to WW2 Rations and Revelations. History didn't end with the treaties. Some of it still lives quietly in cinnamon, in letters, and in the hands that once served.